everyone. Welcome to Speak Podcast. Speak is special people encouraging a kid. This is your girl, Barisha, better known as Bree for this podcast. You all know what this podcast is all about. Special people encouraging a kid or a child or even a youth that had experienced trauma, bullying, or even suicidal ideations or considerations or even attempts. We are here to encourage you to speak up, to speak out, and to speak from within, to live and to live again. So today we have a special guest, one of my friends, one of my mentors, Elijah Rentz.
Yeah.
Elijah Rentz is a youth pastor from People's Church. He is a husband of a lovely wife, Riley Rentz.
Lucky dude.
And we love him. We love them both and how they encourage our children, our kids, the students in Epic at People's Church. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. You crushed that intro.
Oh,
wow.
You
brought it. You brought it. And you made me seem awesome. So thank you.
You are awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
excited
you.
to be here.
I am
excited
glad that you're here. Thank you for being a guest on the podcast. And we hopefully that this won't be your last one. We hopefully you can come on again.
We'll see the ratings afterwards. And
you may bring it up, you know.
Hey, Lord, let it happen. I'd rather go that way than the other.
Wow. So you know what Speak Podcast is all about. Mm-hmm. And I love to bring people on to share their story, to talk about, what life has been for them, whether as a child or even as an adult, that possibly experienced trauma or bullying or even suicidal ideation. Yeah. It doesn't even have to be all three. It can just be, experiencing hopelessness.
Yeah. This
season, we're in the holiday season, and there's a lot of people, our children, who may be experiencing hopelessness, or sadness or even depression during this time. So share your story. What was your story like? And, how did you overcome? Yeah. And I don't want to ask too many questions at once. Yeah. So share your story.
Yeah, thanks for that. So my upbringing, I have two amazing parents, two older brothers and one younger sister, and grew up in ministry. My aunt and my uncles and my mom were all in ministry, and my grandparents were all in ministry. So I was born and bred to be where I am, who I am right now. It's just in my blood. One time I slipped, hit my knee, and then scripture came out. And so it's just what I do. It's who I am.
That's who you are.
So it has been an incredible journey of just learning who I am in relationship to what God has called me to do.
Yeah.
And so out of everybody who is serving in the ministry, my whole family, cousins related, myself, I'm the only one who's serving in full-time ministry.
Wow.
And so my journey truly has been unique. Mm-hmm. And I think something that I'd like to speak to from that journey is just processing what it looks like to have a relationship with Jesus and still have struggles.
Yeah.
And then in the midst of those struggles, see Jesus do what only he could do.
Wow.
And so growing up, it's entirely self-diagnosed, but I would say I had pretty bad OCD. And this is an OCD to the extent of, oh my gosh, those curtains are off. Fix the curtains,
Yeah.
I was talking with my brother today. He said, I'm really OCD about weight plates. And I was like, oh, really? So you feel like the world is ending when those weight plates are not right? And you get what he's saying, right?
Yeah.
He wants it to be done well. He wants it to be balanced. He wants it to be, just right, neat. That's generally what OCD would be referred to. It's neat. Mm-hmm, it's clean. It's proper. The furniture is right. Mm-hmm. It's at that 90-degree angle. I would say you're a perfectionist, but I don't know if that's OCD. So for me, my OCD started in just weird ways. Mm-hmm. It started, I would say, as a basis of me not understanding who Jesus was and is. Mm-hmm. I didn't really understand his grace. I didn't understand his mercy. So I believed that I had to do everything to the most extreme, or the consequence of that would be death or potentially hell or worse. So I was consistently fighting my works with my faith, and that showed itself in a pretty controlling relationship with over fixating on things that I now know that didn't really matter to Jesus all along.
How old were you around that when that all
So I
happened?
would say from a time period of 17 to 19.
Okay.
And so this is when I really took fire in the Lord. And part of it, I think, there's a healthy fear and reverence of who Jesus is and what he's done. And I want to live a life worthy of the calling that I've received. So I will. Lord, would you carry me through it? It'll be by faith. I'll get there. But God, you'll bring me to that point. But 17, 19, I was learning to understand how God's love was a little bit different than my parents, or God's love was different than my brothers in relation. Like, this word love was just love,
Right.
and it didn't have the depth. Like, thinking about how it says in 1 Corinthians that God's love in some translation, it's forbearant. Like, it sticks through it, through difficulty. My definition of God's love is, if you mess up enough, I'll love you enough to cut you off
Been there.
so you can learn and do the right thing. And so you would think it's like, I have to read my Bible every day or else. That was not a part of it. I actually enjoyed that part. I have to spend time. I enjoyed that part. It wasn't that praying. It wasn't like, oh Lord, today I pray I don't get smited.
Right.
That wasn't my relationship there. But it would be like, if I didn't flip the switch enough times, God wouldn't be pleased with me. Then I couldn't do what he's called for me to do. This might result in this ultimate object of somebody going to hell or worse. And then it would be my retainer. If my retainer wasn't where my retainer needed to be, I would just lose it. Like, I remember one time I was preparing for a sermon. I was up way too late, stressed out of my mind. Lord, if I don't do this right, I won't please you. If I don't do this right, I can't minister to people. Like, God, I would write it and I would delete it. I would write it and I would delete it. I would write it and then I would delete it.
There.
And it was 4 a.m. And so I go over into my brother's room and I say, Luke, I can't do it. This is tough. It's not right. And if I don't do this well, if I don't measure up to this expectation of perfection that God has on me, if I don't have it perfect I can't do punctuation. Thank the Lord that he doesn't deal with punctuation in my life. Maybe he will one day, but so far he hasn't. But everything other than punctuation, if that's not perfect, then this God's not going to use it. And I went into his room and I just collapsed. I just said, how can I do this if it's not perfect? And then there's another time where my dad said, son, you totaled the car. You need to pay for it. You need to go get a job. And I fell on the ground full of tears. And I said, Dad, how can I get a job if I can't even read my Bible consistently?
I want to put a pin there.
Yeah.
Because you're speaking of something that kids deal with today, and that's perfection. And not only kids, but adults too.
Right.
Me, I've gone through a period where, even now, where I know you said OCD, but as you're talking, I'm hearing having to be perfect.
Yeah.
That perfection spirit, I would say.
Yeah.
And so many of our kids, so many of our children, so many of our youth deal with needing to be perfect.
Right.
And so how would you speak to that child or that youth that may be dealing with, stand up at 4 a.m. to rewrite a paper because it has to be this way, it has to look this way, even as small as a punctuation mark, like, how would you speak to a child now with that?
Right. I related to that question until you mentioned punctuation. I'm just kidding. AI Siri is the best thing to ever happen to my grammar. It's amazing. But for the students specifically who does that, I would look at them in a tender way, and I would ask them this question. I would say, tell me about who you are. Because I think it would fall down to, at the end of the day, an identity issue. I think between social media, between hearsay, what you've heard them say about this person or that person, learning how to become a friend in high school, learning how to be popular.
Right.
Do I fit in? Do I not fit in? I think people will really wrestle down the details of what the right who would look like. And rather than focusing on the who that they are, they focus on the do of who they are or who they would want to be. And so I think they can conflate that. And so if I was talking to that student, I would say, hey, who are you? For me as a believer, I would say you are a chosen people. If you're in Jesus, you're a royal priesthood. Like Christ didn't die for you for just a little bit of you. He didn't just die for the part of you that's committed the sin, but he died for you and all of you. Like he loves you.
Yes, he does.
He loves the bad parts of you, the parts that you would keep hidden. Like he desires that part. You know, it's interesting. You see Jesus on the cross, and he was torn down to his undergarments, exposed the parts that, and especially in that society, that you would turn your face away from.
Right.
He bared it all. And I think in the same way that he bared it all, God asked for us to bear it all in the same way that he did. And it's when we lean into the Jesus who really loves all of us, and we understand that my identity is found in him, my desire to be perfect, it kind of fails to the logic of I will never be perfect. So the one who was took my place. And he showed me all of him.
Yes.
It's my responsibility to show him all of me. And so I would look to that person, and I probably would listen, because there would be a frailty to their identity. There would be a sensitivity to, they're not trying to be perfect for perfect's sake. They're trying to be perfect for the sake of pleasing people. And then you have some people who actually do enjoy having all the fine details right. And it's incredible that their personality is so different than mine.
And it's okay.
And that's not bad.
Yeah.
It's when you're not them and you're attempting
To be them.
And what happens is you start hiding behind the facade of who you want to be, and you consistently wake up and you're discouraged.
You know, in one of my one of the episodes, I mentioned about sorry, you're not the right fit. And it talks about wanting to fit in.
Yeah.
You know, wanting to fit in this group, wanting to fit in this club, wanting to fit in, even in the ministry, you know, at church, or just wanting to fit in, to be seen, to be known, to be heard.
Yeah.
And realistically, you know, when you know who you are and when you know whose you are, you're not to fit in everything.
Yeah.
You know, every place, every, you know, group, you're not to fit in. And I was thinking of, you remember the game, the musical chairs?
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, how the song goes on and on and on, and you're trying to find that seat, and you're trying to get in the seat before someone else gets in it.
Right.
And if you're not there in time, you're either knocked off or you have to find another seat, but then someone else. Anyway, that's what happens in life when you're trying to fit in, you know, certain things or groups that you're not supposed to fit in. You get knocked off. You get knocked off your path, the path that is, you know, made for you.
Right.
And I want to stick there a little bit with the perfection, because that is something we all go through. And you touched on something. You mentioned about like insecurity.
Yeah.
And that is a root, or I guess a fruit, I would say. Insecurity is a fruit from the root of rejection. And from that comes, you know, perfection, where you're trying to be perfect.
That's deep. That's a good word.
Yeah.
So you're wanting me to speak to one more time? I got lost in the good things that you just said. That's the fruit.
He's so good. He is
that's
so
the fruit of rejection.
But no,
I'm like, okay, my gosh.
Just speaking to.
Ow! I didn't know I was gonna need a Band-Aid. I don't know if we got a Band-Aid in the studio, but I think I need two.
The way that you pour out. Look, how many Band-Aids do I have on me? So yeah.
Jesus was wounded for those, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
But no, just speaking to, again, the kids.
Yeah.
And the good thing about it, this doesn't have to last now. right, I can bring you back on to continue with your story, and we can talk about something else
Great.
too. But to end, I would say, with this episode with
Ooh.
the perfection and giving the kids, our children, our youth,
Yeah.
some practical tools that
Yeah.
they can use while at school or even at home or even in the community when they are feeling like they have to be perfect in everything that they do.
So that is a phenomenal question, and I love a good challenge. And I feel like that has a little bit of both. So what I would probably speak to, still thinking of that student struggling with being perfect, I believe what you said was true about a fruit of rejection would be insecurity. I think that's a part of it. Never heard it. That was really good. Don't miss that. A fruit of rejection is insecurity. You know, Bob Goff, who's this incredible author and just amazing individual and a follower of Jesus, he says that people grow where they're accepted. They grow where they're accepted. And I think sometimes for us, we wonder, why doesn't the person accept me? So I can let my guard down. Because I'm worried. I got to be perfect. I got to say the right thing. I have to fit in. I have to wear the right shoes. I have to do this. I have to. And they forget who. And I think when we don't feel accepted, sometimes we think the problem is with us, but it could be the reason that you're not accepted is because the person who's not accepting you hasn't yet accepted themselves.
So true.
And they're concerned.
So true.
And they're worried. If it's a parent and you feel like your parent doesn't accept you and you feel like you have to always and you're never measure up, perhaps it's because your parent isn't finished growing yet.
Yeah.
And you're putting an expectation on them that only God can fulfill.
So good.
I think one of the times I learned and grew the most is when I realized my dad's not Superman. He's not perfect. And he's working at this thing called life that I am too. And so insecurity would lend itself to thinking that you're not where you should be. You need to be where they are. But I would say a good confidence booster is you are where they are. You just have to change your perspective from I'm not accepted to I'm actually right in the middle of the pack. We're all just a whole bunch of insecure people on a floating globe, spinning a bajillion miles around, trying to figure out how to get to work with both shoes on our feet and wearing socks. It's the idea of you'll never arrive at this moment of pure confidence, but it is being okay with having insecurities and then just saying, you know what, that doesn't define me, but I'm aware of it. I'm gonna do something different. And so here's a way to help you. So pick something that's not detrimental, like missing a comma in a sentence. If you truly struggle with perfectionism, just miss the comma and watch how the world keeps spinning and keeps going. Like, if every single day everything has to be set up just right and just perfect, why don't you just, on it one day, just leave it alone and come back to it? Why don't you just take that time and just make a mistake and watch how life still goes on? Time has not stopped because you didn't put your shoes in your closet on the rack how you needed to. Time did not cancel. The world's still going. You still have breath in your lungs. See, if it's not necessary for you to live, why are you acting like it?
Wow.
And there's some roots in there. And one thing we know about a tree that has roots, it'll have some sort of fruit.
I love it. I love how you just ended that. Yeah. That is good. Thank you so much.
This was fun.
Thank you so much for joining. Well, here we are. We have come to an end of this episode with Pastor Elijah Rentz. So you all, thank you for tuning in to Speak Podcast. And you know that Speak stands for Special People Encouraging a Kid. We want you to speak up, to speak out, and to speak within so that you can live to live again. Join us the next time. Bye.